You know, somebody asked me a question about saliva or blood testing, and while I'm waiting for people to come online, I'll answer that question because I wasn't going to answer it during the talk. So when you're getting your hormones tested, there's a couple of hormones that you can test in blood, things like progesterone, but you have to do it at the right time of the month or it doesn't really tell you much information. You can also test testosterone in blood. Estrogen is very poorly tested in blood. So that's the reason why your doctor never wants to test your estrogen, is because it doesn't really tell us very much when you test it in blood. And so if you're going to test estrogen, you definitely want to do it in saliva. Don't worry, people who just came on the call, I'm not starting the talk yet. I was just answering a couple of questions. And so there's a mix. And in my book, A Smart Woman's Guide to Hormones, I have an entire chapter dedicated to how to test, when to test, what tests to do, and then what those tests mean, which is also important. If you're a menstruating woman, you should get your progesterone tested between day, say 20, maybe 19 to 21, somewhere in there. That would be the best way to test it. If you're a menopausal woman, we already know your progesterone is most likely low. So, welcome everybody. We're going to get started now. I've got a lot of information tonight to pack into this hour that I have with you. Tonight's talk is called the Hormone Triangle. It's really about the basis of your hormones. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lorna Vanderhaeghe. I'm a women's natural health expert. I've been researching and writing on nutritional medicine now for over 35 years. I've authored 13 books on nutrition. I have a master's in nutrition in sciences, and I also have a degree in biochemistry. And my passion is hormones, but my very first book was on the immune system. So next month, I'll probably do a webinar on the immune system. I have a new website. It's called lornahealth.com. I recommend you go there, sign up for my newsletter. So let's get going on tonight's talk. And the talk is about the hormone triangle. So we're really going to look at the root of our hormone problems, so we can really get down and become a detective and find out what's really going on. The first thing we want to do is understand where our hormones come from. And all of our male and female hormones are derived from cholesterol, things like progesterone and estrogen and testosterone and cortisol and aldosterone. And so these hormones are made from cholesterol. So although cholesterol gets a bad rap, you have to have adequate amounts of cholesterol in order to make your hormones. And the adrenals are so important. The adrenals, I call them the backup hormone system. So when your ovaries take a much needed rest at menopause, your adrenals are going to make your hormones for you for the next 30 or 40 or 50 years. And the adrenals make cortisol, which is your stress hormone. They make DHEA, which is your mother hormone, as well as some estrogen and testosterone and androstenedione, as well as a little bit of progesterone. You better love your adrenals. I always tell people, take care of those adrenals, because after you go through menopause, you're going to need those adrenals to take you through the rest of your life in regards to your hormone function. The thyroid sits wrapped around your windpipe, and you shouldn't see your thyroid. So if it's bulging out of your neck, you know you've got a problem. If you've got growths on either side of it, you know you have a problem. The thyroid is so incredibly important, and we're going to talk about the thyroid a lot tonight. Your thyroid is basically the master conductor of all of the hormones in the body. And in North America, especially Canada and the northern US states, we really have an epidemic of low thyroid. And so we're going to talk about testing, how to get the thyroid back into balance, how to protect your thyroid, because it is essential for so many systems in the body. The liver is your sentinel organ for hormone function. Your liver decides if your healthy estrogen is going to turn into cancer-causing estrogen. Your liver is involved in the detoxification of chemicals and hormones. And your liver is involved in, making sure that all of these hormones work in harmony. Your gut is everything from your mouth to your butt. And if you have gas, burping, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, you will have hormone dysfunction. And so we're going to talk about the digestive system. This is the reason why it is so incredibly important that you eat fermented foods and take probiotics and prebiotics, and we're going to talk more about that. Your fat cells are the most dangerous hormone factories in the body. Your fat cells are making tons and tons of estrogen. And this is the reason why we should stay in a healthy weight range, is literally to keep that estrogen in check. Your ovaries have been relegated to the bottom of the list because in every single woman, the ovaries are going to take a much needed rest at menopause. But those ovaries are so important during the childbearing years. And your ovaries also have little receptors on them for T3 thyroid hormone. So here's the thing, is all of these hormones interact. They all talk to each other. The thyroid and the adrenals are directly linked. So when one of those glands has a problem, so does the other. The ovaries are linked to your thyroid, and all of these hormones communicate with one another. So we really, truly have to keep them in balance. And when it comes to how your hormones are manufactured, and this is especially important for the women who want to take bioidentical hormones. So we use cholesterol is basically the building block for all your hormones. And cholesterol is turned into progesterone, and then progesterone makes cortisol, and then cortisol and progesterone go to make male hormones, and then your male hormones are converted into estrogen. And really, the only hormone in the body that doesn't get converted into something else is estriol, which I classify as the safest estrogen. And progesterone is used as a building block to make other hormones. So, you know, although when we talk about bioidentical hormones, we kind of talk about them like progesterone is the safest thing out there, but progesterone is used to make testosterone, and progesterone then can be used to make testosterone, which makes estrogen. So we've got to be careful when we use these hormones. Then what is a normal menstrual cycle? And even if you are a woman on this webinar tonight who's in menopause, you should care about this, because what your cycles were like when you were younger are going to tell us a lot about what is going to happen to you when you're older. So we count the days of a menstrual cycle. Day 1 is the first day of bleeding. Most menstrual cycles are 21 days long or 28 days long. So that cycle from day 1 to day 28. In the first half of the cycle, estrogen rises, and its job is to make your uterine lining nice and thick and juicy. So if an egg gets in there during ovulation, it has somewhere to live for the next 9 months. Most women ovulate, that means when you can get pregnant, between day 10 and day 15. Very important date to note if you want to get pregnant. Very important date to note if you don't want to get pregnant. And the next half of the cycle, progesterone rises. And progesterone's job is to keep your uterine lining intact. And if you actually got pregnant, progesterone would rise 100-fold, and that's to keep you pregnant. If you didn't get pregnant, then progesterone will drop, and that will signal the uterine lining to slough off. Women who get spotting do not have enough progesterone to hold their uterine lining in place. And women who get terrible migraines before their menstrual period often have very low levels of progesterone. Women who get heavy periods have very high levels of estrogen, which make that uterine lining very thick. And I'm going to talk about estrogen dominance, which is related to heavy periods, and how we can get that menstrual cycle back into balance. But your periods tell you everything about your hormones. And I always tell women, if you're that person who is suffering with a thick uterine lining, heavy periods, this is telling you that you've got too much estrogen in relationship to your other hormones. We call that estrogen dominance. So tonight's talk's really about treating the cause of your hormone imbalance. And we start with the adrenals and the thyroid because they are so key for hormone balance. We look at the liver and how we can get our liver to function better. Then we look at the intestines and we go for hormone help. And all of these things are all about getting to the root of your problem. So if someone says to me, you know, I took black cohosh for my hot flashes and it didn't work, I often go, that's because we need to get to the root of the problem, which is often your adrenals, your thyroid, and your liver. So this chart I put together because when we look at menopause symptoms, And not every woman gets terrible menopause symptoms. But if we look at menopause symptoms, things like memory loss, brain fog, insomnia, night sweats, no sex drive, weight gain, water retention, hot flashes, headaches, sleep problems, a lot of these are associated with your liver not functioning properly, your adrenals being tired, and your thyroid going low. And so we have to look at all of those different body systems in order to correct the underlying hormone imbalance, because once we do, you may be that woman who sails through menopause. And not only is the body making hormones, but we also are exposed to hormone disruptors, or what we call estrogen mimickers, in the environment. I call these environmental man-made hormones. And these are found in very common things that you're exposed to every day. So things like pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Pesticides fit right into your estrogen receptor, just like estrogen made by your body. So when I tell people to eat organic food, it is solely to limit and reduce your pesticide exposure. Hair dyes, some of them are full of phenylenediamine, which is an estrogen mimicker. Things like nail polish and paint remover and glues and cleaning solvents are also estrogen and hormone disruptors. Parabens in cosmetics, so you better read all the labels of your shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, mouthwash, deodorant. Who would have thought that your estrogen overload may be coming from your household items? Dry cleaning chemicals. Never use those dryer sheets. They are loaded with estrogenic compounds. Always, as much as you can, buy things in glass, avoid plastic, buy wild fish instead of farmed fish. You know, if you don't have to take the pill, don't take the pill. If you can avoid HRT, don't use HRT. Or when you do use HRT, use natural bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, low dose and short term. And always buy wild and free range whenever you can to reduce your estrogen load. So get those hormone disruptors out of the body. And so what do these environmental estrogens do? We call them xenoestrogens or estrogen mimickers, and they literally mimic the same effects of estrogen in the body. They cause persistent stimulation of breast tissue cells. They disrupt our endocrine system and our immune system. They accumulate in our fat tissue. They promote the conversion of your good estrogen to the bad estrogen, which is really a big concern, because when you get that conversion of your healthy estrogen to the bad estrogen, this is when we see abnormal cell growth in the breast, the ovaries, and the prostate. So that's what's linked to estrogen-related cancers. Also, estrogen and progesterone have to be in balance. So when estrogen gets really high, whether it's produced by your body or because you've been exposed to it in the environment, your progesterone goes low. And then we get estrogen dominance, which is things like endometriosis, uterine fibroids, ovarian cysts, breast lumps, PMS, basically damage to our ovaries. And we have a lot of infertility going on right now as well, due to all this estrogen overload, and not just in women, but also in men. We're seeing little girls menstruate earlier instead of 12 and 13, 14, 15, and 16. We're seeing 8, 9, and 10, which is not a good thing. Baby boys are being born with smaller testicles. We're seeing a decrease in male sperm counts. But all of these female health conditions that we see, things like endometriosis, ovarian cysts, uterine fibroids, heavy periods, breast lumps, painful breasts, these things are due to this huge hormonal imbalance, which I think has a lot to do with the environmental estrogens that we're exposed to, and then all the stress we're under, because when we're under a lot of stress, our estrogen levels go up. When we eat too many sugary foods, our estrogen levels go up, and none of this is a good thing for hormone balance, mainly because when you're estrogen overloaded, or you'll hear the word estrogen dominant, this causes our thyroid to go low because too much estrogen blocks the uptake of thyroid hormone. We have no sex drive, our progesterone's reduced, we get weight gain, fluid retention, migraine headaches, our cellulite is terrible. And women will get terrible hot flashes and night sweats, which kind of seems counterintuitive because the doctors used to prescribe estrogen to women to reduce their hot flashes and night sweats. But when women are estrogen overloaded, they often get worse hot flashes and night sweats, mainly because their thyroid doesn't work properly. But estrogen dominance is linked to all of those perimenopause, or those conditions that women get between 35 and 50 that really wreak havoc with our lifestyle, especially if you have heavy periods and things like endometriosis and fibroids. What are the hormone disrupting foods? Well, coffee that's not organic, I think it's due to the pesticide content. Alcohol, we know that alcohol raises estrogen levels, which is why the cancer societies are always telling women to limit their alcohol consumption. Commercial dairy products are loaded with estrogen, another reason to buy organic dairy. Commercial meat, chicken, beef, these things are full of synthetic hormones, unless they've actually been raised without feed that is contributing to this. Farmed fish are also hormone disrupting foods. And then all the pesticide-laden fruits and vegetables that we consume. And there is a reason why people are choosing organic, wild, and free range. And soy products. And I'm going to talk about soy in a minute because I think it's one of the biggest hormone disruptors that people consume. And you will never hear me use the word phytoestrogen. The word phytoestrogen means plant estrogen. And I won't use that word because it can mean so many things. It can mean that it mimics estrogen. It fits into estrogen receptors. It could block estrogen. It could reduce or detoxify estrogens. So why would we want to use a word that could mean 5 different things? So you never will hear me say, oh, that's a phytoestrogen, or I will tell you if it's a good estrogen or a bad estrogen. And this is a very old article that was published in the Calgary Sun talking about high cheese diets linked to testicular cancer in young men. Well, it was really all about the hormones concentrated from the dairy products. This is my soy slide, and I put it in every talk that I possibly can because this was an excellent soy study. They actually took women, had them drink 1 8-ounce glass of soy milk, and they had them, then they tested their estrogen levels in saliva. And as I said earlier, when someone was asking a question about what kind of testing to do, when it comes to estrogen, we want to test estrogen levels in saliva or in 24-hour urine tests. And in this study, what they found is they gave women 1 8-ounce glass of soy milk, tested their estradiol, which is the most potent and powerful form of estrogen, the one that can create problems for us. And they found that on average, most women had their estradiol go up 280%. Some women had their estradiol go up over 1,100%. Now, this is not a good thing if you're already estrogen dominant, if you have uterine fibroids, if you've got heavy periods, breast lumps, endometriosis, if you're at risk of breast cancer, if you have breast cancer. And so my recommendation is that we don't consume soy products because they create havoc for our estrogen levels. Now, this article, again, a very old article. So we've been talking about this for a very long time, is that the cleaning chemicals in our house are also increasing our estrogen levels and wreaking hormone havoc. And thankfully now we can buy a lot of safe cleaning chemicals that don't cause hormone disruption. My favorite website is ewg.org. It stands for the Environmental Working Group. It's not a .com website, it's a .org. Or you can type in Skin Deep in Google and you will be able to go to their sites, the nonprofit organization, and type in your cosmetics, your hair care products, your deodorant, your toothpaste, and look up whether or not they are hormone disrupting or not. You can find out if those things that you're putting on your skin, and remember the skin is an excellent delivery system for hormones. That's why we use it for a lot of hormones and for a lot of drugs. And so if you're putting chemicals on your skin and they're hormone disrupting, this could be a very bad thing. So thankfully, EWG, the Environmental Working Group, has put together this massive database of skincare products that you can now go find out, are they safe or not? So the liver, I talked about the liver at the beginning of the talk because your liver is the sentinel organ for hormone function. Your liver is involved in processing and packaging hormones, in changing hormones from one hormone to another. Your liver is involved in cholesterol manufacture. Your liver also removes terrible chemicals from the body. And you have to have a great functioning liver in order to have hormone balance. And so I really recommend that you focus on eating wonderful foods like fresh fruits and vegetables, protein, protein from free range and wild sources, lots and lots of vegetables, organic if you can, drink lots of water, and of course, limit alcohol consumption because it's a little bit hard on our liver, especially our estrogen levels in the liver. So when we look at what are the symptoms of liver stress, things like indigestion and constipation, high cholesterol levels. As soon as someone tells me they have high cholesterol, I know their liver is under stress. Eye problems. So if you're getting itchy eyes, red or watery eyes, this can be a sign of liver stress. Difficulty waking up in the morning is another one. Itchy skin. So anybody who's got itchy legs or itchy arms without a dermatological condition like eczema or psoriasis should really be looking at helping out their liver. Allergies and headaches. If you're angry, you're irritable, or you're depressed, it also could be due to liver stress. And lots of aches and pains, fatty cysts, and lots of abdominal fat. So you want to look at your liver and get it back into balance as quickly as you can. And so what clogs up our liver? Things like HRT and birth control pills, poor food, alcohol, stress, lots of antidepressants, especially Prozac, which inhibits the detoxification system in the liver, prescription drugs, especially antacids or things that shut off the acid in your gut, like Nexium and Tagamet and antacids. And as soon as you start to have all those gut problems, you should be going, oh boy, my liver might be having a problem. And of course, pesticides and environmental estrogens also create havoc for your detoxification system. So remember, you've got these three very key factors that are involved in hormone function. Your liver, which is your detoxifier and makes hormones and converts hormones. And then you have your adrenals, which are your backup hormone system. They help you deal with stress, and your thyroid. And those three systems, when they're working beautifully, your hormones will be in balance. So I always say, love your liver. How do you do that? Start the morning with a little bit of fresh squeezed lemon or apple cider vinegar in your water, and buy the good apple cider vinegar, not the one that is commonly found in your commercial grocery store. Swedish bitters is another one, but you want to start the day with something that gets that digestive system working properly. Eat beets, either beet juice, dandelion greens, artichokes, things like fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi. And rhubarb. Rhubarb is going to come into season very soon, probably the end of May, beginning of June. So if you love rhubarb, eat lots of it. And then eat protein, because protein-based foods enhance your glutathione. And glutathione is a nutrient. You can also buy it in a capsule, but it's made from protein. So women tend not to eat enough protein. And so the more protein you eat, the more glutathione that you produce, especially if you're consuming whey protein, which is an excellent way to get your glutathione. Things like, so the nutrients, everybody always writes me afterwards and says, what nutrients do I take? So for your liver, things like milk thistle, NAC, lipoic acid, a good multivitamin. The liver loves fresh air, exercise, rest, and water. And my main recommendations for the liver are things like curcumin, which is a curry spice, milk thistle, deglucarate, sulforaphane, and indole-3-carbinol. And sulforaphane and indole-3-carbinol you will get if you eat cruciferous vegetables, things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, and kale. And if you have a beverage that you want to add to that, a hot one, drink organic green tea. Why do I say organic? Because a lot of the tea is sprayed with fungicides. So you want to make sure that the tea you buy is organic. pay that little bit more to know that they haven't sprayed all those chemicals all over everything. And of course, the essential fatty acids like fish oil and borage. So reduce alcohol consumption, that's a big one. And indole-3 carbinol, I think, truly is my favorite nutrient. It is derived from cruciferous vegetables, mainly broccoli, and you can buy it in a capsule as well. And indole-3 carbinol, I call it the liver detoxifier, but it also is a hormone balancer. And I think it is the most potent hormone balancer out there. And the way indole-3 carbinol works is it eliminates excess estrogens or bad estrogens via the liver. It increases your good estrogen. So remember, we have these bad estrogens that cause cancer and abnormal cell growth in the body. And think about abnormal cell growth differently in women. Endometriosis, a thick uterine lining, breast lumps, ovarian cysts. These are abnormal cell growths, as well as, if you've got growths in your thyroid. So indole-3 carbinol inhibits the bad estrogen. The name for the bad estrogen is 16-alpha hydroxyestrone. The good estrogen is 2-hydroxyestrone. So it keeps the good estrogen at the levels it's supposed to be, reduces the bad estrogens, which is so important, and that protects against estrogen-dominant cancers, things like breast, prostate, and cervical cancer, as well as uterine cancers too. And indole-3 carbinol has been researched along with tamoxifen, and they're found to be more effective when taken together than tamoxifen alone. And for some women who just absolutely cannot handle tamoxifen, a lot of doctors are giving super high doses of indole-3 carbinol. As well, indole-3 carbinol stops flooding periods, ovarian cysts from coming back, puts endometriosis into remission, and shrinks those uterine fibroids. So if you're a woman listening and you've got any of those conditions, you want to take indole-3 carbinol every day. I really call it the superstar. It's been researched for abnormal pap smears. So if you're that woman who keeps having abnormal pap smears, or you have HPV, then you definitely want to take indole-3 carbinol, because it has been shown to reverse abnormal pap smears, even when they are a stage 3 abnormal pap smear. None of the placebo group in the study who used the indole-3 carbinol for HPV-induced abnormal cervical lesions had any change, but the people who took the indole-3 carbinol had their cervical cells reverse. Also, indole-3 carbinol is found to halt tumor formation in colorectal cancer. It inhibits thyroid cancer, and if you've got a goiter or abnormal cells in your thyroid, you definitely need to take indole-3 carbinol. And I just love it. If you're a guy who's got prostate problems, or your dad had prostate cancer, you definitely want to take indole-3 carbinol every day. Now we're going to talk about the thyroid, because I think that especially in Canada, we have so many women, especially women, who have low thyroid. So right now, 23% of the Canadian population, predominantly women, are taking thyroid medication already for hypothyroidism. And sadly, we believe from the testing that's done that up to an additional 20 to 30% of women are undiagnosed or classified as subclinical low thyroid, so they're not being treated properly. And hypothyroidism, or thyroid that is not being treated properly, is a big health risk for women, and I'm going to talk about why. So the big problem is our thyroid test. So the thyroid gland is literally the gas pedal for thousands of reactions in the body. It tells every system in the body what to do, and when you develop low thyroid, you feel terrible. The challenge is that thyroid testing normal range is too broad. So what does that mean? You go and you have your thyroid tested. The standard test they do is a thyroid stimulating hormone test. And when you have that test, they come back and they tell you it's normal. If you ever have a doctor tell you your thyroid is normal, you need to ask for the number, because in Canada, the average range of normal is 0.4 to 5. But we know from the research that's been done that anyone who has a TSH above 2 will have symptoms. By the time you finally get to 5, you've packed on 30 pounds, your hair is falling out, your skin is wrinkling and dry, you don't have any energy, you feel like you're pushing yourself through the day, you cannot lose weight. It's called stubborn weight loss. And so I always tell people you have to look at your thyroid test and you want your TSH number to be below 2. If it is above 2, then we need to focus on getting it down below 2. And it's so confusing to people that the higher that TSH number is, the lower their thyroid. So the higher the TSH, that means that you have low thyroid. The other way around is hyperthyroid. So your thyroid is involved in whether you're going to be happy, sad, or depressed. Your thyroid is involved in your heart rate. Your thyroid is involved in blood pressure. Your thyroid is involved in how much water balance you're going to have in the body. So fluid retention and edema is associated with it. Your thyroid is involved in the manufacture of the increase in LDL cholesterol. That's the lousy or the bad cholesterol. Your thyroid is involved in how quickly food is going to move through your digestive tract, so you get constipated and gain weight. Your thyroid is involved in your fertility. The thyroid is just essential to every system in the body. So the symptoms of low thyroid include hair loss, particularly the kind of hair loss you get at the front or along your part line. Some people lose 1/3 of their eyebrows. Some people, when it's very severe, end up losing all their body hair. So hair loss is a hallmark symptom of low thyroid. So is weight gain, fatigue. People feel like they're pushing themselves through the day, low mood, depression. Weight gain where you cannot lose a pound. You can stop eating, run on the treadmill for hours, and you just can't budge that weight. You're feeling cold, you've got no sex drive, you have severe hot flashes. Night sweats in women who are still menstruating is a definite low thyroid symptom. Infertility and recurring miscarriages. And frankly, anyone who is doing fertility treatments, if you have a TSH above 2, I would not start fertility treatments until your TSH is below 2, and of course, high cholesterol. And smart doctors know that if your cholesterol is going way up, they're going to do liver enzyme check, and they're going to look at your thyroid to make sure that you don't have low thyroid. So if you have these symptoms and you haven't been tested for thyroid, go get your thyroid checked, and you want your TSH number to be below 2. So here's the other thing. There's a direct connection between iron levels in the body, ferritin, which is your iron storage, and low thyroid. So low iron decreases these two thyroid hormones. One of them is T4 and the other is T3. So low iron levels cause a decrease in T4 and T3 thyroid hormone. And low iron impairs the conversion of the T4 thyroid hormone to the more potent T3 thyroid hormone. And low thyroid goes hand in hand with low ferritin. Why? Because low thyroid promotes low hydrochloric acid in the stomach. So when you have low thyroid, you don't digest your food as well because you have low hydrochloric acid. And as a result of having low hydrochloric acid, you have poor iron absorption. So low thyroid also lowers your body temperature, causing you to make less red blood cells. Where is all your iron carried? On your red blood cells. And low thyroid causes heavy periods, and subsequently you're bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And so your iron levels drop, your ferritin levels drop, and you end up in this vicious cycle. So not everyone who has low iron is going to have low thyroid. But if you have chronic low iron that is not being treated properly, you could end up with low thyroid. And if you already have low thyroid, you should get your iron levels checked because these two things are so heavily related. Also, thyroid and osteoporosis. So a lot of women who have low thyroid that's not being treated properly will end up with osteoporosis, especially if they are taking too much thyroid medication. So too much thyroid medication, bone loss occurs due to the overstimulation of osteoclasts. These are cells that break down bone. So bone is not static. It's constantly being built up and broken down, built up and broken down. Women with thyroid problems often also develop osteoporosis, and they often develop severe osteoporosis, especially if they're on too much thyroid medication without it being monitored properly. Flip side, not enough thyroid hormone and bone loss occurs. So we really want to have you on the supplements to support your thyroid. Things like selenomethionine, things like zinc, vitamin D. I cannot say enough about vitamin D, and everyone should be taking 5,000 IUs of vitamin D every day. Calcitonin is a hormone secreted by the thyroid gland, and it keeps those cells that break down bone from breaking down more bone and allows the cells that build up bone to build up more bone. So how do we keep that happening properly? We take calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, and vitamin K2, MK7. Those are so incredibly important. And how much calcium to magnesium? This has been debated as long as I have been talking in the health food industry. I think everyone now has come to the consensus that if you take 500 milligrams of calcium, you take 500 milligrams of magnesium. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and you've got to have a healthy thyroid. So get your thyroid checked and get it in balance. And so what are the herbal recommendations for low thyroid? My favorite out of all the recommendations for thyroid is ashwagandha. And why do I love ashwagandha so much? It increases T4 thyroid hormone. Ashwagandha also works on your adrenals, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And then if you just took a great multivitamin with minerals, it would have things in it like potassium iodine. It would have selenium. It would have vitamin D. It would have some calcium and some magnesium, things that support your thyroid. And here's the other thing. You want to make sure that you have protein for breakfast, because protein contains tyrosine, which is an amino acid used by your thyroid to make thyroid hormone. And get rid of the soy, the fluoride in your toothpaste. Don't let anybody put fluoride on your teeth. And when you have an x-ray, a dental x-ray or a mammogram, make sure that your thyroid is 100% protected. Otherwise, you will end up with thyroid nodules and thyroid problems. So I'm just going to recap this. So what do you do for your thyroid? Vitamin D, so essential. We have higher rates of low thyroid in the north, and we believe it's due to vitamin D. You want to take ashwagandha. How much ashwagandha? I would do 200 milligrams a day. I think that would be important. And there are combinations of these nutrients you can also take. You want a great multivitamin with minerals. You're going to eat protein for breakfast. You could just have protein for breakfast, which will also jumpstart your fat burning furnace. Get your thyroid checked. And we need to look at our adrenals, because the adrenals and the thyroid are directly linked. Potassium iodide is one of the oldest research nutrients. There are just thousands of studies on this. It is the most absorbable form of iodine. It is the potassium iodide form that your thyroid absolutely loves. A lack of iodine is the single reason for intellectual impairment in babies, in deficient moms. And much of the iodine we eat is used up by your thyroid gland. The main function of iodine is to make thyroid hormones, but it also promotes any cancer cells to blow up. They call it apoptosis. It's been shown to protect us from leukemia. It kills H. pylori in the gut, which is causing a lot of acid reflux and gut problems. It protects our breasts, our cervical cells. High fat diets can block iodine. And you need to have adequate iodine to have adequate thyroid health. And it also reverses pap smears. So any really good thyroid formula that you buy in the health food store is going to contain potassium iodide. And most of the good multivitamins with minerals also have a tiny little bit. You don't need much. Thyroid's very selective at absorbing it all. So adrenal fatigue. The adrenals and the thyroid are linked. So when you get exhausted adrenals because you've just been doing way too much and not taking care of your body, your thyroid will go low. So we call this adrenal exhaustion or adrenal fatigue. And so what are the symptoms of adrenal fatigue? You fall asleep fine, but you wake up several hours later and you can't fall back to sleep. That's the person who's lying there at 2:30, 3 a.m. in the morning, wide awake. Fatigue, exhaustion, chronic fatigue syndrome. You have hypoglycemia, so you end up with that feeling of being faint or no energy, or you've got alcohol intolerance. You used to be able to have a couple of glasses of wine. Now you get drunk on one. That's a very common symptom in adrenal fatigue. Muscle aches and pain, low or high blood pressure, because remember, those adrenals are making hormones for you too. Too much cortisol, your stress hormone, and you get nervousness, anxiety, and insomnia. You crave coffee, sugar, salt, alcohol. You have an increase or decrease in skin pigment. This is the person who looks like they've had a suntan when they're under terrible stress, even though they haven't been in the sun. And things like recurring infections and digestive problems. Have you noticed everything relates back to the gut? If you've got liver problems, your digestive system doesn't work well. If you have thyroid problems, you're not making enough hydrochloric acid. If you have adrenal fatigue, you also have digestive problems. So this is where that all connects, your liver, your thyroid, your adrenals, and the intestines. So the adrenal glands, they produce the stress hormone cortisol to help you deal with stress. When there's too much stress, they're sending out too much cortisol. The adrenals also help your kidneys control water balance. The adrenals also make hormones. And that, I think, is so important, and why we need to take care of these adrenals, especially when we're younger. They produce progesterone, and they also produce a little bit of testosterone. In males, the adrenals are the sole source of estrogen in the body. So men make estrogen too. Too much stress in men often shows up as man breasts and beer bellies. So stress is directly related to that. And exhausted adrenals cause imbalanced hormones. But the big hallmark one is when your adrenals are under too much stress, your thyroid goes low. And we can often bring those adrenals back quite quickly with lifestyle changes, nutritional supplements, sleep, de-stressing, but the thyroid will often stay low. So it's important that we find some kind of balance in all the activities that we do in our life. And I'm sure right now, with what's going on in the world, that a lot of people's cortisol levels are off the map. I kind of stopped watching the news because it just was so stressful. So what happens when you have all this stress? Well, chronic elevated cortisol hormone actually changes the shape of your fat cells around your belly and makes your fat cells resistant to weight loss. So this is why people will get a ton of belly fat when they're under stress. And then you end up with these fat cells all navigating to the middle of your body, and you turn into an apple shape. The other thing that happens is cortisol and DHEA are also linked. DHEA is your anti-aging hormone. And so you want to have adequate levels of DHEA. When cortisol goes up, DHEA drops. So more aging and more symptoms because of this. So we want to bring that cortisol down so your DHEA can go back up. And things like you get gut problems and liver toxicity and water weight gain and uncontrollable food cravings. So it's all about de-stressing our life. The liver needs, when you're under all that stress, the liver needs to produce more cholesterol to make more hormones, which is why you get increased cholesterol. And cortisol inhibits the conversion of your T4 thyroid hormone to T3. And what do you get? Low thyroid. And when you're under lots of stress, progesterone is used to make more cortisol. Now, progesterone is your calming hormone. It's the one that makes us able to sleep, makes us feel safe. So if your body is using your progesterone to make cortisol, what do you end up having happen is you end up with low progesterone effects. The other thing is cortisol fits right in to your progesterone receptor. So here your body thinks, oh, it's progesterone, but it's not. So you don't get the effect, and you have anxiety and all of the nervousness symptoms, and you stop sleeping. So that cortisol, although it has the good effect of helping you deal with stressors that are short-lived and gets you that energy to run away from the saber-toothed tiger or any kind of fearful event, it can be a bad guy when it's around too long and in high levels. So how do we fix this? And we want to de-stress. So this is where meditation, the Calm app, deep breathing exercises, saying no. Vitamin C is used by the adrenal glands, and right now we should be taking lots of vitamin C to help protect us against viruses. So how much vitamin C would I take every day? Between 1 and 3,000 milligrams, and you can divide it up. You want to have a good B complex vitamin. Now, some of the multivitamins with minerals already have really great B vitamins in them. Those would be the activated form of B vitamins, but if not, get yourself an activated B complex vitamin, and you'll look for the word activated because that will give you the most absorbable form of B vitamins. And, you know, I've heard doctors say, oh, B vitamins just create expensive urine. Well, your urine should be that bright fluorescent color that you get from taking B vitamins. It actually means you're taking B vitamins, which is good for your adrenals. Lipoic acid is so important because it stops those stress hormones from building up in your heart. And lipoic acid is also good for your skin. So you get the added benefit there too. Lots of protein because this helps build hormones and neurotransmitters that help you deal with stress. And I talked about ashwagandha already in regards to the thyroid. It is so important for the adrenals. So add some ashwagandha, about 200 milligrams a day. And rhodiola is also an awesome adrenal support nutrient that helps to calm down all that cortisol. So rhodiola, it's another superstar. We call them adaptogens because if your adrenals are running too high, it brings it into the normal range. If your adrenals are too low, it helps to support them. So a lot of people who are under emotional and physical stress take rhodiola. I think the US Navy SEALs have done some great research using rhodiola. It's a powerful anti-stress nutrient. It also is for the immune system, and it helps regulate your heart, and it has an antidepressive effect. So right now when people are feeling the stress of lockdowns and not really knowing where we're going, rhodiola would be something that's awesome to add to your program. Ashwagandha for adrenal support, it also supports the heart. It also helps with us getting to sleep in the middle of the night. So if you're that person who's waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, yes, you're going to take your little tiny bit of melatonin, 1 to 3 milligrams at bedtime. You're going to take your magnesium, but you're also going to take ashwagandha, and you're going to take that ashwagandha around lunchtime because it helps to bring your nighttime cortisol levels down. As well, ashwagandha has been shown to bring your cortisol down, as well as C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker. And they've done some research using ashwagandha to enhance sexual desire and libido. So that's a good thing too. And of course, it's used to treat the thyroid. So you get a double whammy if you take ashwagandha every day. The intestine. So your intestinal tract, it literally runs from your mouth to your butt. And if you have gas, burping, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, then you need to get focused because your digestive tract detoxifies hormones. It is also involved in coupling hormones together. It also detoxifies environmental estrogens. And so what do we use for this? Probiotics. My favorite probiotic is BB536. So you can actually go to the health food store and ask for BB536. And this probiotic is shelf stable. What does that mean? When we make probiotics, they are live and they start dying as soon as you put them in the capsule. Well, this BB536, the people who developed it many, many, many years ago, I don't know how many decades ago now, developed it so that it would be shelf stable, so that you get what you get when you buy it, which is so awesome. You don't need to have billions and billions and billions of the bacteria because it's still going to be in there. When you bought it, you're going to get that dose. And so I love that probiotic. Prebiotics are the next big phase. How do you get prebiotics? Things like fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, guar fiber. Those of you who've listened to me a lot in the past know about Regular Girl, which is a guar fiber. It is absolutely awesome as a prebiotic. All of these things are designed to get your digestive tract working properly. And if you're having to take all of these antacids and Nexium and all of this stuff to shut off your digestive system, then you need to get very focused on a healthy digestive tract. Chew your food until it's mush, take probiotics. And guess what? That favorite nutrient of mine, indole-3 carbinol, which is found in broccoli, cauliflower, kale, also helps your digestive tract. And milk thistle and sulforaphane, which is also found in broccoli sprouts, and deglucarate, these nutrients are all involved in a healthy intestinal tract as well. I try to make it all so that I find all these nutrients that are related to the liver, the thyroid, and the adrenals, so you don't have to take 50 things. And really, we can do a lot of it with food. If you're eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables, which I think we should do every day. And the other night I had cauliflower mash, that why anyone would ever need to eat potatoes again after having that. It was so incredibly delicious. If you're eating cruciferous vegetables and you're eating, wild free range sources of protein, lots of water and green tea, and you're really taking care to eat the healthy fats, you're going to have a much better functioning digestive tract than if you're eating processed foods or a lot of sugar-laden foods, which disrupt the system. I have to talk about iron before I take your questions, because iron is so essential for the thyroid. Iron is used to make estrogen and progesterone. So if you have low iron, you are not making adequate estrogen and progesterone. Iron is used to make serotonin, your happy hormone. Iron is also found in myoglobin in your muscles. And if you don't have enough iron, you can't exercise. This is when people get exercise fatigue. And you need iron to make ATP, which is your energy. Iron is essential for your thyroid. We just talked a lot about that. And I think it's a serious health concern. I don't think we're taking it seriously enough. It is extremely devastating for your children to have low iron. And so everybody should be looking at the symptoms of low iron, things like dark circles under the eyes, peeling fingernails, fatigue, heart palpitations, fertility problems, hair loss. So the number one reason for hair loss in women is low iron. The number two is low thyroid. Premature graying of your hair is associated with low iron, pale skin, heavy periods, breathlessness with exertion. That's the person who climbs a flight of stairs and they're huffing and puffing, cold hands and feet. The average Canadian only gets 8 milligrams of iron from their diet, and we need 20. So look at your children. If they have those dark circles under their eyes, lots of tantrums, a hard time sleeping, they're clingy to their mom, these are all symptoms of low iron. And for adults, there's this silly thing that continually is said to people, that you have to be careful with iron because you'll become toxic. Well, you would only become iron toxic if you already had awesome iron levels and you ate a whole bottle of iron. Most of us are so iron deficient, and we are not eating high iron foods every single day, or we're not even absorbing our iron properly. And so we need to stop saying this scary thing about iron toxicity, because in my opinion, iron is absolutely essential for proper hormone function. And considering that most women who are menstruating are losing iron every month, we probably have a bigger problem than we think. Someone needs to make a finger prick iron test so we can find out daily where our iron is really at. What is one of the best herbs to raise progesterone levels? We use Vitex to do that. Of course, normalizing your estrogen is very important, but if you have low progesterone, one of the herbs that is progestogenic is Vitex, or chaste tree berry as is called. It works directly on your pituitary gland to stimulate another hormone, which in turn makes progesterone. And Vitex is also important because it inhibits prolactin, and prolactin is associated with infertility, obesity, acne, and polycystic ovarian syndrome. And low thyroid is also associated with elevated prolactin levels. There's just some great nutrients in the health food store that really can make a difference for people before we reach for drugs, things that can really change our hormone function without having to go on the birth control pill to regulate periods, or using other things that are just ultimately have to be monitored because they're harmful. I love this ancient Chinese adage. It says, a doctor would rather treat 10 men than one woman, especially when it comes to her hormones. And so it sounds like hormones are complicated, but they're really not. It's about eating the right foods, managing your alcohol consumption. If you're going to drink alcohol, then take nutrients like lipoic acid and NAC to reduce the negative effects of alcohol. Have a glass of water for every glass of wine that you drink. Control your weight, because as soon as we start to pack on the pounds, then those fat cells start to make too much estrogen, and we end up in a vicious cycle of more fat cells, more estrogen, increased risk of cancers. We've got to get that thyroid in balance. Getting tested is step one, but knowing your number, and I'll recap here, you need to have a TSH number below 2. If it is above 2, then you have to include those nutrients that are going to get your thyroid back into balance. And when we think about menopause symptoms, so let's talk about when women first got their periods, maybe they went through some transitional stages as their body was learning how to menstruate. So, you might have had acne, some irregular periods, then the body kind of figures it out. When you go through menopause, it's not that you have this immediate shut off of your hormones. That only happens if your adrenals are not working properly. If you've been so stressed out during your 30s and 40s, then when you need those adrenals to make your hormones for you, then you have problems at menopause, because suddenly the body's going, wow, I can't do it. So really taking care of your adrenals is so important. Getting your thyroid checked so that it's in balance, because if you enter menopause means 1 year with no periods. If you enter menopause with low thyroid that's not being treated properly, it creates horrific hot flashes and night sweats, mood swings, depression, anxiety, feelings of foreboding. And so you've got to get that thyroid checked, and don't listen to them when they say it's normal. You want to know what your number is. And if it's above 2, then we want to adopt all the things I talked about to get that thyroid working properly. There's nothing wrong with taking thyroid medication. Often women have suffered for far too long before they can get a prescription. The key is to do low dose thyroid medication along with supportive herbs and nutrients, so that you don't create another problem such as osteoporosis from taking high dose thyroid medication. A lot of the recommendations I'm making are about eating properly and de-stressing so that your adrenals work properly, your thyroid and your liver also function well. So sign up for my newsletter at lornahealth.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Lorna Vanderhaeghe. Yes, we will send this out to you afterwards. And I'm going to answer a couple of questions. So there was a question about what causes so much hair growth in the face at menopause. Well, it's actually an increase in testosterone. That's why you're seeing this increase in male facial hair growth. So I'll tell you what I do for this. Get yourself a prescription, and if you've got a pen handy, for 0.5% estriol, and I'm going to spell it for you, E-S-T-R-I-O-L. So estriol. Estriol is the only safe estrogen, and just put a tiny bit around your chin and your lips, your upper lip. And what this does is it increases the skin estrogen. And estriol is really, truly the only safe estrogen. It's the estrogen produced by your body when you're pregnant to protect your baby from the bad estrogens. Estriol has been heavily researched in cosmetics. We know that it does not cause abnormal cell growth in the breast or the uterus. And your doctor's not going to give you a prescription for estriol for your face. So just say you have vaginal dryness and they're probably too busy to even look. And so you want a 0.5% estriol, estriol, not estradiol. If they put a D in your prescription for estradiol, you don't want to take that because that is the estrogen that is linked to estrogen receptor positive breast cancers. If you have hair and you're young, so if you've got a lot of male facial hair growth and you're in your 20s, 30s, early 40s, this could be due to polycystic ovarian syndrome. So PCOS is a hormone condition that is caused by elevated blood sugar and insulin, elevated testosterone, and it's really a pre-diabetic condition. So if you're 20 or 30 and you've got a lot of male facial hair growth, maybe your hair is greasier than other people's, maybe you get acne, maybe you have irregular periods, then what we recommend for polycystic ovarian syndrome, first, I think people should always get tested. So you want a blood sugar and insulin. You want a hemoglobin A1C, which is the hallmark to find out if you have diabetes. You also want to have a testosterone blood test. But what you want to take from the health food store is EstroSmart, 4 capsules a day, and GlucoSmart, which contains an ingredient called D-chiroinositol, which has been clinically researched for polycystic ovarian syndrome. So that would be my recommendation. You know, ultimately with iron, the key is to get your iron levels up. And how do you do that? You eat iron-rich foods. Vitamin C helps to absorb iron as well. B vitamins help to absorb iron. The one that I like is iron pyrophosphate. And you want to look for iron pyrophosphate that's been coated in a starch or a lecithin because that one increases absorption quite dramatically. And you don't have to take high doses. This is the other thing. You want to take between 15 and 30 milligrams of iron pyrophosphate. And this will raise your hemoglobin and ferritin levels. If your TSH is in the normal range and you have low T3 and low T4, you should get your iron checked because we know that low iron decreases your T3 especially. And you may not be converting your T4 into T3. Ashwagandha and Googles, which are 2 herbs, they work together to cause your T4 thyroid hormone to convert to the more potent T3, but your iron has to be in very good levels for that to happen. Vitex enhances progesterone. It works very nicely to do that. Another way to enhance your progesterone is to decrease your cortisol. And I think decreasing cortisol is an even better way of enhancing progesterone. And if you are a woman who is postmenopausal and you are just not sleeping at night, you'll want to use Prometrium, which is a bioidentical progesterone. And you want to take Prometrium in a 200 milligram dose at bedtime. And you don't want to take it at another time of the day because it makes you very, very, very sleepy. Iron pyrophosphate is not the same as heme iron. Heme iron is blood iron. So usually heme iron comes from animal blood, and you'll find heme iron supplements in the health food store. My recommendation is that people take iron pyrophosphate, which raises hemoglobin and ferritin quickly. So that would be my recommendation. Yeah, and this is the reason why I'm telling you to take the iron pyrophosphate that's wrapped in starch and lecithin is because it doesn't cause constipation. It does not cause your teeth to turn black either. There's a question about sleep and how to get sleep. So I'm going to answer that question. And I know that we're a little bit over time. So how do we help people sleep? You want to take 1 to 3 milligrams of sublingual melatonin at bedtime. I really love the Calm app. It has sleep training in it. You go to bed at the same time every day. You have to have an absolute pitch black bedroom, no caffeine after lunch, do not work out at night, and you want 200 milligrams of magnesium. You're going to take melatonin, just straight sublingual melatonin every day of your life, even if you don't think it works, but you need a tiny amount. You don't need big doses. 1 milligram is great. And, you know, you also want to make sure your iron levels are good, because we know that people don't sleep. If you're menopausal and you're waking up, it could be because your blood sugar is dropping. So maybe have a half a chicken breast before you go to bed, not a bowl of ice cream, which can disrupt sleep. And there's just so many things that we can do to help people. And I have other webinars as well. I did one on iron, so you could listen to the entire webinar on iron. And if you'd like it, we can send you the link. You can also go to YouTube and look up Lorna Vanderhaeghe YouTube, and you'll find my weight loss seminar along with this one. Go to Lorna Health and sign up for my newsletter. I do a draw every month for a free consultation. And follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Make sure you're at Lorna Vanderhaeghe. A lot of people know that I sold my nutritional supplement company to Jameson many years back. And so if you want to talk to me directly, it's the best way to do so. And thank you again, everybody, for coming on the call tonight. If you have questions, you can email them to Lorna at Lorna Health through my website. So go to lornahealth.com. And thank you very much for coming on the call this evening. I just appreciate all of you so much. Thank you. Good night.